To thine own self be true. So I had to write a piece about honesty, where I'm at, doing some work on myself. That last little bit, well, the healing journey never ends, right? But there were some things that I went through. I thought I had healed certain things, but something happened to me and it brought up all these old wounds over again. It's like, man, I thought I already worked on that. I thought I already healed from that. I thought I already, ended the whole codependent thing. And little did I know, you have to pull something up from the root. It's like growing a garden and tending a garden. And these things or these people or whatever, they're like weeds, right? You pluck them all out. But if you don't get that sucker up from the root, well, it's going to grow back. So I'm going to read this to you. And hopefully it helps you. I'm harder on myself than anyone else. I have two modes. Beat myself up, hold myself to insane standards of perfection, or F it. I'm never good enough no matter how hard I try. When I was 9, my parents split, my sisters left, and my mom emotionally checked out. I think that's when it started, the feeling of not being good enough. Because deep down, I come back to that same feeling of, if I'm good enough, maybe people won't leave me. Maybe if I'm good enough, people will love me. I thought I had worked through that. When my sister told me to pack up and go, it reopened the old wounds, and floored me, hurt me to the core. I lived with her for 1.5 years, and I had gotten my own apartment. It had roaches. I managed to stay for 6 months, and then I had a lapse of drinking one night after a little over 2 years sober. I had to move back into my sister's because I couldn't take it anymore. But I didn't want to move back in because A, she drove me nuts, and B, I felt extremely shameful and embarrassed. After a few weeks, I started smoking a little herb because I was deathly afraid of going back to alcohol. But I felt like I was so messed up, I could never get it together. My mental health problems were never going to leave. I was never going to be stable unless I could break the system and heal my brain. 7 months later, I went to ayahuasca ceremony. It gave me an epiphany. My sister mimicked me on my spiritual awakening journey, and I thought for a long time she was jealous of me. But I didn't think that was possible because she had what I wanted, a family, a house, etc. I was living in her basement. No way could she be jealous of me. I was the one who had nothing to show for myself. I tried to get a sugar daddy and save up money, but after the ceremony, I knew it was wrong. So I let that go. And the real estate job training, that didn't fit either. I was trying to figure out what to do and how to get my life together. My dad made a comment to me one day about me needing to get out and move on with my life. Things I finally started to realize were how unhealthy my relationships with my dad and my sister were. I couldn't ever make major decisions for myself, and when I did, they always told me why my ideas would never work. I started listening to everything they said, even when I hated it, but their ways didn't work for me either. So after the ceremony, I started to all of a sudden be able to speak up for myself. I started to get my voice back. Long story short, it's about the time she kicked me out. Let's see. I started standing up for myself, but that meant I was ungrateful. It was as if because I was a mess and not stable and had to live with them, that meant it was okay to belittle me and always make fun of me, degrade me, and talk down to me. I started to pray differently than before and asked God to speak through me when the time was right. 4 days later, my sister was coming down from a shroom trip and they were talking, and I said, I can show you some meditations. I learned that you don't need to take a trip to reach enlightenment. And they laughed at me. And I felt the air shift, and I couldn't control my mouth. I quietly spoke, and they stopped laughing. I said, it's okay. You guys always laugh at me. And I don't remember the rest of what I said. But at the end, I said, we need to find a way to communicate where we are not being toxic to each other. Before that, they all went to see Batman without me. And I brought it up prior. They all kept it secret until that Saturday morning when her mother-in-law came to watch the kids. I was clearly sad, and she smiled and tried to hide it. That was the moment I knew she wanted me to stay miserable because it made her happy. Then it all started coming full circle, where I kept getting into relationships with people not capable of empathy. I knew I had codependency issues, but I wasn't ready to let go of my family. And then I was forced to. Things I learned began to make more sense. Like you can't heal in the same environment that made you sick. I just never applied it to my family. I felt like I lost the last piece of hope I had. And I didn't want to be alive anymore. So I prayed to God, if I don't have work that's important for you, I just want to go home. And I mentioned in my other story when I was 7 about how God had told me I had a great purpose. And after the ceremony, God started speaking to me. He said my sister was going to betray me and I need to go. That's when I took off on that trip. You could see that on my other page. But I didn't listen, and I came back. And I know that I have to listen to that still small voice, because I'm not here by accident or by luck. I'm here because God has a plan for me. I have to let go of my way and let God guide me. I don't want to admit how badly I have been hurting over my family. I wanted to pretend I was fine and just move on. But I have to process it. God kept saying, trust the process, appointed time, full circle. Before the pandemic, that was the Merkna theme. Trust the process. And when I got here, a lady said, don't rush the process. I'm so worried about making mistakes, but God says even my mistakes are not mistakes to Him. He still uses them to lead me where He wants me. I spent a lot of time trying to please other people and then self-sabotaging for even longer. I stayed in a victim mentality for a long time. I wanted people to feel sorry for me for a very long time too. And I eventually got to the point where I turned into the villain because I was tired of being hurt. I'm still struggling to find a balance between standing up for myself without being the villain or the victim. And I think we all are in our own ways, finding that good ground to stand on. Like, you don't want to be mean to somebody, but some people will keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing your boundaries. And some people are really good at acting like they care about you. Meanwhile, their intentions are not good for you. That's why it's important to pay attention to the unspoken things, the body language, what people's actions are, because actions speak louder than words. And when the words don't match the actions, that's when it's time to go. The thing is we have to get to a place of self-acceptance where you love yourself and you know what God thinks of you, and everything else doesn't matter. Because what God thinks of you really is truly what matters most. But it's also what you think of yourself. Because if you don't think highly of yourself, you don't value yourself, other people aren't going to value you either. But you can also get to a place where you value yourself enough to where you're not going to accept bad behavior. And that might look like me. You're kind of alone for a while until God brings those right people in. But you got to keep those spaces empty so that they're available for when the right people come in. So now that I'm free, I can really start to accept myself just as I am. I know my heart, and God knows my heart. Working on being a better me. I am good enough. I am worthy of being loved. I do love me. I start to love the parts that don't reflect who I want to be, because at one point I needed them to survive. It's time to finally come out and be the real you. It's safe. If you don't have people around you that accept the real you, let them go. It's time to elevate. Don't waste any more time.